Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 38th part of What If Deku Can't Stop Adopting Kids. Hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 206, Incorrect Quotes. Netsu was casually walking down the hall, when he stumbled upon Fu, looking in the opposite direction. Oh hey Fu, how are you doing? Fu then turned around, to reveal his empty eye sockets. They took my eyes. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Don't jump! Maria shouted at him from the ground. Do a flip! Sori shouted. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. I thought you said you were making cereal. Fuku shouted at Sheena while Maria put out a fire that was raging in the kitchen. I was. Sheena shouted through tears. Then how did you start a fire? Fuku screamed. I just put it in the oven for a bit, Sheena answered sheepishly. Whyy? Fuku yelled. Because it was cold. Sheena said. It's cereal. It's supposed to be cold. Fuku needed to lie down. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX burst in. Boss. Pei is doing some weird shit again. You woke me up for that. Kaza growled as she tried to go back to sleep. What's next? You gonna tell me the sky is blue? Boss, she's cradling a dead kid. Karaki explained. Ugh, it's probably just a replica of her dead brother, don't worry about it, Kaza responded. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX friend. With the power of friendship? Knees asked. Yup. And if that fails, then we'll use the power of violence. Kiba added. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX 'Cause I'm sugary sweet. Kay responded with a grin. No, because you give me indigestion. Jin clarified. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX quickly. That was dancing. I thought you were having a stroke. Netse gasped. Oh ha ha. Ken laughed sarcastically. Funny. Where is he? Is he still breathing? Vera shouted as she burst into the room. I wasn't joking, Netsa said. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX My said over the loudspeakers in the lab. From now on, please avoid saying the phrase, I will become the god of the new world. Also, do not try to ascend to godhood indoors. We've had 12 incidents this week. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX started her call with Yami. So, you come here often? Amai ended up asking. This is my room. Yami pointed out. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Man, that maid of yours sure does make good tea, Achiko said. Where did you find her? In the dumpster behind a McDonald's, Izuku answered. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX hair is really nice, you know. Kei told Maria as they walked down the halls. That's when they turned the corner, to see Shiruku walking towards them, eating out of a jar of eyeballs. Good morning. Shiruku greeted them cheerfully as she munched on eyeballs like grapes. Good morning. Kei said back with a smile as they passed each other. See, isn't she nice? XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX The representative said. Now if we can talk about your drug dash. Slam. Suddenly a massive impact could be heard, and the ground shook harshly for a bit. What the hell? Was that an earthquake? The representative asked in a panic. No. One of my sons just tripped. Don't worry about it. Izuku said calmly. Brrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr car. What's that? The representative asked, still panicking. Oh, that's just the fire alarm. It looks like someone set part of the house on fire. Don't worry about it. Izuku said, still unfazed. Ah. Suddenly Le crashed through the roof, only entering the room for a moment, before flying through the floor and going deeper into the house. Sorry, one of the kids crashed through my office. Don't worry about it. Izuku sighed. Sir, I gathered up all the bodies like you said. Oh. I forgot you were in a meeting. My apologies. Sai said as she quickly left the room. Bodies? The representative shouted. One of my son's special moves allows him to discard his old body and make a new one, Izuku explained. He was practicing for a while, so he left a lot of his old bodies behind. Don't worry about it. Ding. Sorry, I have to check this for a second, Izuku said as he checked the text message on his phone. Oh, dear, it looks like the plant monsters broke free. The what monsters? The representative spat. Yeah, my Botoni division makes them on accident from time to time, Izuku explained as he started sending another text. They're mostly harmless so long as they're in small numbers. Don't worry about it. I'll just send some reinforcements and the situation should be resolved. As Izuku was texting, suddenly a small tear opened up in the sky behind him, sucking up all the air around it, before closing just as quickly. Alright, that should take care of it, Izuku said, before putting down his phone. Shall we get this meeting started? Kaboom! A massive explosion erupted behind him, but Izuku paid it almost no mind. It's really noisy today, Izuku noted. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX cameras alongside Sai. Do you have any blunt swords that can vibrate? Yes? Sai raised an eyebrow. Where is this going? So have you ever used it to pleasure yourself? Sori asked without a hint of shame. I'm going on break, Sai said, promptly getting up and leaving. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX I'll try, boss, but I'm shopping for clothes right now, and I'm kinda struggling, Sori said in return. Struggling how? Izuku sighed, knowing it was likely something stupid. Well, boss, I can't find any clothes, only soup, Sori responded. Okay, then get out of the soup section? Izuku said. I tried that, but no matter what section I go to it's all just soup. Sori told him. How can it all be soup? Izuku asked, before realizing something. Wait, Sori, what store are you in? I dunno, I just kinda wandered in here. Let me check. Sori said. After a few seconds, Sori responded. Oh. This is a soup store. That explains it. Sorry about that, boss. Thanks for the help, I'm gonna go find a place that sells clothes then come back. Later. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. I need a pipe bomb. Kiba said as she opened a gift that was sent to her. Kaboom! XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. I told Fu not to leave his limbs lying around. Izuku sighed as he noticed a disembodied arm in the training room. But then he looked at it a bit more and realized something horrible. Wait a minute. That's not Fu's arm. Izuku panicked for a second, before realizing something else. Oh, it's just one of my sister's arms. Phew. Chapter 207, Fu's Updated Notes Part 1. ERI. Eri has a backstory that's so unbelievably sad that you'd think it was made up by a writer who was trying way too hard to make a tragic backstory. She lived with her original mother and father, presumably happily, until one day she accidentally killed her father with her quirk, more on that later. At this point Eri's life went downhill faster than a simp who actually gets to meet their idol, and thinks they have a chance with her. Her mother blamed her for her father's death, and gave her away to her grandfather, who was the head of some villain group. At first things were okay, her grandfather apparently cared for her, but things quickly went sour again, when the group was taken over by a villain named Overhaul, who was just an absolute monster. He tortured her mentally and physically, using his quirk to pretty much take her apart and put her back together, while keeping her locked underground and calling her a monster. This lasted for about 2 years, until one day Eri managed to escape, and Dad saved her, before adopting her. And so she became the first child of the new Midoriya family. Nowadays Eri seems almost like a normal girl. At first she was a bit more shy and afraid of everything, but thanks to some help from friends and hard work, she started being more energetic and friendly, even helping other shy kids here. It's insane that she went through all that, and came out pretty okay. People say she's strong, but honestly that's an understatement. As for her quirk, Eri's quirk is called Rewind. It allows her to reverse things to a previous state. Basically she can rewind something through time, to how it was before. For example, she can turn a butterfly back into a caterpillar, and an apple core into an apple. I'd be lying if I said I understood everything her quirk can do. She can heal wounds, get rid of diseases, make people younger, turn people into monkeys, it's an evolution thing, remove quirks, and undo a person's existence, like what she did to her father. Her quirk only has 3 drawbacks. First, it's hard to control. Second, she can only rewind organic stuff. Meaning she can't do it to stuff like metal or American food. And last, her quirk has a limited amount of energy. Eri has a horn on her head, which allows you to tell both when her quirk is being used, and how much energy she has stored up. The bigger the horn, the more power she has. Something else you could call a weakness is that her blood can be used to do similar things to her quirk. Which is why that Overhaul guy did what he did, he used her blood to make quirk erasing bullets. I also think her quirk has something to do with that new drug Dad made. Meaning a lot of people would want to get their hands on her. Right now, Eri wants to be a doctor and a hero, and with that quirk, she can do that easily. Just so long as she learns to control her quirk. Kei. K is a lot like the sun. The only time she'll ever stop shining is when she dies, and when that happens it'll be a dark time for everyone. When Kei got her quirk, people started treating her like a hideous monster, including her parents, who kicked her out and made her live on the streets. She survived on the streets for a while, until a villain found her, and captured her. Using her as a weapon, until Dad saved and adopted her. Despite everything she'd been through, Kei's upbeat attitude and optimistic outlook never went away. She's the most positive person I've ever met, and I have no idea how. According to her, being sad won't help her, which is true, but that's not really how emotions work. I know I'm not really the person who should be saying that, but even I know that much. However, there is something that might prove she has a secret hatred towards the world. Her love of puns. Not just any puns, but the cringiest puns imaginable. Like her puns are probably the only thing in the world that can make me feel pain anymore. Her quirk is called petrification. It's as simple as it is scary. You look at her eyes, you turn to stone for 24 hours. Although funny enough, her eyes are apparently really pretty. Like emeralds. This quirk also gives her snakes for hair, for seemingly no reason. I can't really figure out if they're alive or just her. They aren't very dangerous, but they can eat, and the food will end up in her stomach. Kiba. Ah, Kiba. Can't live without her, it's amazing I'm still alive being around her. Kiba was, believe it or not, a regular girl once until her quirk came in. Not only did this mean she had to drink blood to survive, but it also caused her to keep breaking things with her immense strength, so her parents kicked her out. She lived alone on the streets for a while, forced to steal and attack people in order to survive, until she met me, and we decided to stick together. She didn't need to attack people to get blood, and I got someone to entertain me. While we were living out on the street, she started to feel insecure, and so she developed this chuny personality to hide her real feelings. Calling herself the Queen of Eternal Darkness, getting a massive but easy to break ego, and constantly needing praise. Eventually, however, our luck ran out. We couldn't find any meat for me to eat, and so Kiba didn't get any blood, leading to us both being on death's door when Dad found us, or I guess when we found him, and he adopted us. Like I said earlier, Kiba often says that she's the Queen of Eternal Darkness, and now that she's a streamer she gets all the praise and support she could ever ask for. Plus Dad's never hesitant to give her love and support, which has made her a total daddy's girl. She's also very thoughtless and clumsy. I can't count the amount of times she's ripped off my limbs or squished me or whatever else. But, even with all that, she is a good girl. She always tries her best to help out others, and she always feels guilty whenever she realizes she's done something bad. And she will always be ready to help out her family. Her quirk is called Blood Boost. The more blood she drinks, the stronger she gets. She's very powerful, but whenever she does anything it starts using up her blood storage, and she gets weaker and weaker the more she exerts herself. If she uses up too much blood, she dies. She also has a transformation that makes her a lot stronger, but it makes her lose her mind and act like a wild animal, attacking everything in sight. Not only that, but it uses up her blood storage very quickly, and will leave Kiba at death's door afterwards. Kiba hates this form, and never wants to use it again, because she hates the idea of being a monster and hurting other people. But I have a feeling she won't be able to ignore it forever. Sansan. Sansan is completely made of acid. So you can probably guess what happened to her mother when she was born. Due to her accidentally killing her mom when she was born, her father hated her, and gave her away to other family members, who also hated her because she was made of acid and kept destroying things. Eventually, one of them had the messed up idea to trap Sansan in an acid-proof jar, then hide her in a bunch of trash on a beach. And Sansan was stuck in the jar for a year. I'd rather die than ever go through something that boring. Fortunately, we found her, and Dad adopted her. I think she was the one who got Dad to start the Midoriya Foundation. It's insane how far we've come from there. Oh, and before I go on, I call Sansan her, but her gender is kinda weird. Technically she doesn't have a gender, but is closer to male because she can get woman pregnant. But she chooses to be a girl most of the time, but she doesn't really seem to care. One time we had a guys' night, and Sansan came along. She shapeshifted into a more boyish form, so we didn't really have much reason to refuse her. I think this is called gender fluid, which is actually funny considering she's made of fluid. Anyway, Sansan is mostly pretty upbeat despite what happened to her, but because of her past, she absolutely hates being still, and will always be moving. She also hates wearing clothes because of this. She's always looking for something fun, so most of the time she goes around exploring. She even gathers gems she finds underground. She seems to like making art. She made this really cool cave with gems on the ceiling that look like stars, and gem flowers on the ground. It actually made me feel something when I saw it. Sansan's quirk is called Acid Body. Like I've said, her entire body is made of acid, and she can move around through some kind of weird psychic-like power. Being made of liquid, she is practically immune to most kinds of attacks, and while she's not very strong normally, she can manipulate her body in weird ways to make her attacks hit very hard. While Sansan is very strong, she also has some very bad weaknesses. You can freeze her, evaporate her. If you electrocute her you can stun her for a bit. If you can keep her from moving around she's not very strong, and so you could trap her. And her weird psychic body control isn't very strong, so sound waves and vibrations can cause her to lose control of her body. Speaking of her body, we add this special chemical to her body every day, which keeps her acid from burning things for 24 hours. Although when she's like this, there is a risk that she could make a girl pregnant. Kyoku. It's funny, people say that Dad has a secret quirk that makes children come to him. I don't think there is any better proof of this than Kyoku. Kyoku saw us and wanted to join our family, so she broke into our old house, and used her quirk to change our memories to make it seem like she was always part of our family. It didn't last long because we had some photos that went against her fake memories, and after all that was over we learned her past. Apparently her parents didn't care about her at all, so she wanted a real loving family. Dad, being dad, of course adopted her, adding to the number of daddy's girls in our family. Kyoko is a little ball of pent-up anger and issues, making her pretty violent at times, although she is extremely loyal to our family, and would never do anything to hurt us. She's somehow both cocky and smug, and extremely insecure. You see, while she has a loving family now, she still hasn't gotten over the fact that her own family didn't love her. Which is fair. Although she is trying to overcome her feelings, so that makes her better than most in my eyes. Her quirk is called Memory Edit. If she touches your head, she can look at and even change your memories to whatever she wants. The only way to fix your memory is to either have her or someone else with a quirk like hers fix them, or to have the fake memories proven false. Although the fake memories won't go away even if that happens, but your correct memories will come back. Shiroku. Shiroku was the first kid that was given to us by Diosi. Her dad didn't really like her appearance, so he gave her up, and so she got taken to the Diosi, because she has a birth defect that means she can only eat human meat. Eventually Diosi sent her here, and the rest is history. Shiroku loves making clothes. She likes creating pretty things in general, but mostly clothes. She'll spend like 80% of her time making clothes with her spider minions out of spider webs. And she's gotten really good at it, to be fair. Almost everyone here wears something that was made by her, and I'm pretty sure all my clothes are made by her. She's very passionate about fashion, and will get overly upset if someone insults her clothes or wears something stupid looking. I remember she got into a fight with Sanson because she refused to wear her clothes. Another thing she is way too serious about is romance. To her, any romance is like a TV show, and she will do anything to make her ships happen, causing her to meddle in people's lives way too much. Shiroku's quirk is called Spider Queen. Not only does it give her the bottom half of a spider and 5 eyes, she can also do anything a spider can do, but at human size. Which makes her about half as strong and fast as Kiba, lets her walk on walls, and shoots webs out of her not butt. She can also command spiders to do her bidding, hence the name, Spider Queen. Yami. Yami's past is weird to think about. His parents lived way out in these woods before Dad owned them, and were killed by wild animals when Yami was a baby. Fortunately, Yami was born with his quirk, and used it to keep the animals from killing him. Yami then lived in the forest as a wild child for most of his life, until we moved in, and he saw Dad for the first time. After a whole incident involving some kidnapping, Yami joined the family. And Kyoko used her quirk to teach him how to be more like a person and less like a wild animal. Nowadays Yami is the farthest thing from a wild animal imaginable. Sure, his speech isn't perfect and he still eats a bit sloppily, but he's actually really smart. He gets decent grades, and he's trying to understand psychology in order to make people feel better. And because I think it interests him. Speaking of interests, Yami's quirk is called Creatures of Grimm. It allows him to create monsters called Grimm out of people's negative emotions. Yami absorbs the negative emotions from people around him, and turns it into this black sludge that comes out of his mouth. Depending on how much energy he uses, he can create lots of different kinds of Grimm, with a long list of abilities. The kinds of things Yami can create seem to only be limited by the amount of negative energy he's stored up and his imagination. And so far we don't know if Yami has a limit to how much negative energy he can store. Yami mostly uses his quirk to make a lot of Grimm, rather than just a few powerful ones, so people with powerful quirks that can fight a lot of enemies at once can counter him a bit. Fukunoko. Fuku was yet another unfortunate victim of bad parents. Or just a bad parent in her case. Her mom seemed pretty meh. Her dad was a rich jerk who apparently hated women, and tried to raise Fuku as a tool and marry her off to some rich guy. Like Eri, she got abused, but not nearly as bad Eri did. Although Fuku wasn't as strong as Eri was, to be fair no one is, so she ended up being scared of pretty much everyone and everything, and never wanting to leave her room. Although she did want to. It was probably because of that when she eventually got to the Midoriya Foundation, she started improving pretty quickly. Sorry, still need to explain how she got here. After years of abuse, her mom eventually exposed her husband and got him arrested, with Fuku getting sent to stay with Diyoshi before coming here. Back to Fuku's progress. Fuku is actually really friendly and super nice, but due to her trauma she has a hard time trusting or approaching people. Because of this she tends to get really scared when new people come to her, shouting out ridiculous things that she's afraid you're going to do to her, before running away. Worst case scenario, she'll even use her quirk on accident, but that's unlikely thanks to her training. Fuku mostly prefers to stay in her room even now, but when she does come out it's mostly to either cook or do archery. Speaking of which, Fuku is actually very talented. She can write, draw, cook, shoot a bow, and even sew. And she's a lot more determined than you'd think. Mostly because she's afraid of disappointing or angering people. Fuku's quirk is called fear gas. She can release a gas around her body, and if you breathe it in, you'll be stuck in a waking nightmare. Your worst fear will come to life and you'll be completely powerless as you're tortured by illusions. It's horrible. Good news, Fuku has a lot more control over it than she used to, and it doesn't stay around for long. So even if she does use it, it should be easy to avoid. Otoko. There's not really much to say about Otoko. His story is pretty much the same as Shiroku. His parents gave him up after he was born, and he was with Diyoshi until he came here. He's a really quiet guy, mostly keeping to himself, probably because he can't talk, and doing very quiet things. Like reading, painting, taking care of plants, or relaxing in the pool. His quirk is called Fueled by Fear. If you touch him, and you feel a certain amount of fear, you will explode into flames. And that's all we know about it really. Chapter 208, Fu's Updated Notes Part 2. Kai. So Kai is like Shirak and Otoko. Not much of a backstory to go over really. Kai himself is what you'd call a cinnamon roll. Very polite and thoughtful towards others. Even with his massive size, he's caused the least amount of damage out of anyone with a strength-boosting quirk. Due to his size, he doesn't have a lot of hobbies, other than watching TV, flying, and sparring. Although he really loves bedtime stories. Thanks to Kai's quirk, Kaiju, Kai is a over 40-foot tall, 3-headed dragon, with acid for blood, and 2 huge wings. He's extremely strong and heavy, and not as slow as you'd think. Although due to him being so big, he is a very easy target to hit. Mu is an odd one. Then again, aren't we all? According to Mu, his parents didn't want to deal with his disappearing all the time, as well as the injuries he'd get from his quirk, so they gave him up to Diyoshi. Mu's odd because he's shy, but not in the way that you'd think. He doesn't mind talking to or being around people, he just doesn't like to be seen by of this. He's pretty secretive and hard to find, but he likes watching people, so if you feel like someone's watching you, it's probably him. Mu's quirk is called Dimensional Doorway. He can make invisible portals to a weird dimension that's mixed with ours apparently. In this dimension he can still see and hear people, but they can't see or hear him. He can also go through people and objects like a ghost. Only problem is, things aren't really meant to exist in that dimension, so if you go inside it, you'll quickly start to not exist. This can happen to Mu too, but he has a bit of a resistance to it, so it takes 30 minutes before that happens. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for these clothes. As someone whose quirks end with them getting ripped apart as well, I can relate. Yanda. Oh boy. Yanda. Yanda was, according to her, a normal girl until her quirk came in. Which forced her to read minds. After that, she started learning that people weren't exactly as nice as they pretended to be on the outside. And even worse, she learned that her parents were cheating on each other, and accidentally exposed this, pretty much destroying her family, which ended with her being in DOC care. While she was there, she was still forced to listen to the thoughts of all the people around her, which continued to drive her mad. To the point where she even apparently ripped off her own ears. This didn't help much, because then she became extremely paranoid and afraid. Apparently once you start hearing other people's thoughts, you can't go back. Eventually, she ended up here, and that's when the chaos began. You see, Yonde hates people. Most people, that is, she's fine with us, mostly. And so she deals with this by doing good deeds. Basically, she tries to fix a problem by manipulating people into doing what she wants, which normally ends with someone getting hurt. She absolutely loves manipulating people. It's her passion. And unfortunately, she's really good at it. What's even worse is that she also does a lot of actually good things, so Dad can't get super mad at her most of the time. As much as I hate to say it, she's probably the smartest out of all of us, and she uses it for evil. Okay, evil's a bit much. Like I said, she does do some good, and even the bad things she does have some positive reasons she does them. She's extremely loyal to the family, and will do anything to protect us, and thanks to her quirk, she can do quite a bit. I think she's just someone who wants to do good, but she's letting all that anger get in the way. And honestly, I understand. I don't really like people either. I'd probably like them even less if my emotions were intact and if I could read minds. Honestly, I'd probably be just like her. Maybe that means I have the least right to stop her, or maybe it means I have the most. Anyway, I'm gonna keep doing it, because I'm probably the only one who can. Anyway, her quirk is called Mind Sense. Instead of hearing sounds, she can hear people's thoughts, and instead of talking, she can use telepathy. She can't turn this off, and even walls can't stop it. The only things that can stop her from hearing thoughts are special earplugs, or cutting off her ears. Netsu. Netsu's past is the standard, given up by parents, taken by dearly, thing. His personality is more interesting though. Despite appearing like your standard shonen protagonist meathead, he's actually not. Not only can he actually be smart sometimes, but he's actually really into art and music. He actually does this really interesting type of art, where he paints using fire. I've never watched him use it because me and flames don't exactly mix, but the paintings are cool. At least they will be once he gets some more practice. His quirk is called Flame Dominance. He can make very powerful flames, but his quirk is very hard to control. Which is why he is on fire at all times. His flames can be even more powerful than Endeavor apparently, but his lack of control means it's hard to say who has the better quirk. Kyosei. Kyosei is my partner. Now and forever. His quirk is called Symbiote. His body is a lot like Sanson, because it's more liquid than solid. It's a bunch of black goo. In order to survive, he needs to bond to someone, which involves him living inside someone's body. The plus side of this is that Kyosei can boost your strength and speed, protect you, use his body as a weapon, and quite a few other things. On the downside, Kyosei will slowly eat away at your organs, and cause you to go berserk until you die. Which is what happened to his mother when he was being born, and Diyozi took him after she died. Fortunately, I'm not affected by his quirk's downsides, because my quirk perfectly counters them. Which is why he's bonded with me. Kyosei doesn't do much right now besides help me with whatever. Mostly because we're bonded, and he's a baby, but I can't help but wonder if he'll want to do any hobbies or anything in the future. Kira. Nees and Kara are a complicated case. Even by the standards of the Midoriya family. So Kara was an assassin sent by the MLA to kill Dad, who I stopped before she could get close. When she woke up, she was a completely different person. Apparently, this is called DID, and it involves someone having multiple personalities. It's kinda like being two people in one. Although her psychic powers make things complicated. Nees is the personality that we see most of the time. By the way, Nees was a fake name that Kira used, but we didn't know what else to call her, so we just called her that. Nees doesn't remember anything about her / Kira's life, and as a result she's a bit nervous. Not as nervous as Fuku was, but still pretty jumpy. Much like Fuku, Nees often prefers to stay in her room watching anime with her waifu pillows. Kira, we don't know much about. Most of the time she's not even around, and when she is it seems like she doesn't want to be. Seems like she prefers to have nose out instead. Their quirk is called Vectors. They have 4 invisible psychic arms coming out of their back. They can reach up to 6 feet normally, but she can extend them a bit further at a cost. She can also make them disappear whenever she wants. They move very quickly and are very strong, and can chop through metal like butter. She can also move them through objects apparently. She has two weaknesses. First, she has two horns on her head. These are kinda like psychic antennae that allow her to use her quirk. So break them, and she's powerless. Also, it seems that her quirk seems to have a recoil on her body. If you hit her vectors hard enough, it hurts her a bit. And if she makes her vectors longer, it also seems to hurt her. AKA. Before I start, I want to say that AKA isn't evil. She's just traumatized and misguided. AKA lived in a small village when she was younger, and had a pretty decent life, until one day some villain ruined all of it, and destroyed her entire village, killing everyone she ever knew and leaving her the only survivor. As you might expect, this caused her to really hate villains. She ended up in one of those terrible orphanages that you see in movies all the time, with an orphanage director who could only be described as a villain. So you could probably see where that was going. AKA tortured the man with her quirk for a while before making him turn himself in. Which is pretty villainous if you couldn't tell. AKA views villains as less than human. Demons that deserve to have every terrible thing done to them, and are undeserving of life. She doesn't want to kill them, she seems to think killing is almost purely villainous, but her way of doing things is still troublesome to say the least. Also, weirdly, AKA speaks like a cartoon villain. No one really knows why, and if you ask her about it, she denies it. AKA's quirk is called assimilation. She can tear off pieces of her body, and if she gets that piece inside a cut on your body, she can use it to take control of your body, and use it like her own. It's very easy to tell when someone's being controlled by AKA, because their hair turns white, and their eyes and voice change to be more like hers. AKA can also mess with someone's quirk, and change the way it works. The limits of this are unknown. Getting someone free of AKA is almost impossible during a fight. The only way to free someone from AKA's control is to make them eat vegetables. Yes, really. Whatever AKA's body is made of, is very allergic to vegetables, deathly allergic. And if someone under AKA's control eats vegetables, the piece of AKA inside them will die. AKA herself isn't very strong, although her body is very Play-Doh-like, so it can be a little hard to do damage, even more so because of her healing abilities. Sheena. Sheena's story is very similar to Kira's, but unlike Kira, Sheena was forced to be an assassin, and was looking for a way to escape. Which she did when she came here during an attack, and helped us fight the villains who invaded our house. Something to take note of, is that Sheena didn't really do a lot of fighting herself technically. Whenever she'd have to fight, she would use her quirk to turn into a form she calls Gami. Unlike with Niz and Kara, Gami and Sheena aren't different personalities, but just Sheena under mind-changing affects. Sheena herself is a very shy and anxious kind of person. At least she used to be. Ever since she discovered makeup and fashion, she's become a lot more confident. Not like Kei or Netsu, but she's closer to Kiba than she is to Eri now. Although she's become pretty obsessed with clothes and makeup now. Sheena is also kind of the reverse Fuku. Because she's very not talented. She managed to burn a bowl of cereal once, and most other things she tries don't go much better. The only thing she is good at is singing, and to be fair, she is very good at that. Like all of her talent went into that one skill. She's also been getting good at playing instruments, but that's not from talent, just hard work. Sheena's quirk is called Death's Hand. Although it should be called Death's Hands, because she can turn both her hands into sides, but whatever. She can turn her hands into sides, and if she cuts something with her sides, she can kill whatever she wants, so long as it's a part of the thing she cut. She can even kill things that you normally can't kill, like willpower and quirklessness. The limits of what she can and can't kill are pretty complicated, and we don't fully understand them. But we do know that she can't kill things she can't cut, unless they're attached to something she can cut. Also, no matter what she kills, the effect will only last 9 minutes, before it's returned to normal. Alice Bate. Alice is the first kid here from another country. She's from America. Her quirk was so powerful that the American government kept trying to take her, so she came here so Dad could protect her and her mom. Alice seems only a bit upset about this, but she's mostly okay and not letting it keep her down. She's a mostly peppy girl, who really likes collecting hats. Her quirk is called Destiny Dictation. And it's really complicated, so stay with me. If she knows someone's full name, she can write down a certain time, and then influence that person's actions for an hour. Here is an example. If she writes it down, at 12 o'clock Isuku Midoriya will eat off his own arm. I would eat off my arm at 12 o'clock. It's not full mind control. If she tries to make you do something you really wouldn't want to do, then you can resist it. She also can't make you do anything impossible. Also, if something stops you from doing one of the things she wrote, you won't do the rest either. So if she says, at 12 o'clock, Isuku Midoriya will slap Kiba in the face then eat off his own arms, if I can't find Kiba or she just doesn't let me slap her, then I also won't eat off my arms. Remember, her quirk can't work if she doesn't know a person's name. A powerful quirk, with big drawbacks. I wonder what she'll do in the future. Jin. I don't really know much about Jin. He spends almost all of time sleeping and the rest of it eating. That's mostly due to his quirk, or at least it was. His quirk is called Radiate. And he radiates this weird energy from his body called Chaos Energy, which would need a whole other entry to explain, and even then I don't understand it, and neither do people much smarter than me, but just understand it's very powerful, and can be deadly if you're around it too much. He has a birth defect that caused it to leak out constantly, which not only was dangerous, but also caused him to be tired all the time. But now he has these rings that keep the energy from leaking out, so he shouldn't be so tired all the time, but his behavior hasn't really changed. I guess he's just lazy. Chapter 209, Fu's Updated Notes Part 3. Ken. Ken is one of the kids who was adopted into the family who doesn't consider himself one of Day's kids. Along with his sister. He and his sister lived with their parents, who on the bad parents scale were around Kyoko's range, until one day there was an incident with one of his transformations, which caused him to attack his sister. Which is when DOC took him and his sister. Ken is similar to Kiba, but less cringe. He put up an arrogant act to hide his insecurities, when in reality he kinda hates himself for attacking his sister. Even if he didn't have full control. While he can seem kind, rude, and unpleasant, he can show his nice side if you let him. Just don't feed his fragile ego. Ken's quirk is called Omni. And it allows him to transform into 10 different forms, all with different powers, but he can only stay in one form for 10 minutes. Ken used to have some issues controlling when and what he'd transform into, until Dios actually did something useful besides being a delivery service, and gave him a special watch called the Omnitrix, which allows him to deselect and transform on the watch, and turn it into. Although it's not perfect, and they can still mistransform sometimes. It seems like when Ken transforms, he can't go into another form until he turns back and waits 10 minutes, but that might just be a limit they have right now. Due to an incident, Nara was forced to go from one transformation to another, so it's possible they could learn how to do it at will. Upgrade. Upgrade is one of Ken's transformations. In this form, Ken becomes a living pile of goo, like Kyosei, and also like Kyosei, he can bond to things. But not people or animals, instead he bonds with technology. When Upgrade bonds with something, he not only gets full control of it, but he can also change and upgrade it. Which is why the form is called Upgrade if you couldn't tell. Even when not in this form, Upgrade can still do some basic shapeshifting, and shoot a laser out of its eye. Although it's not very strong. Upgrade can also be used to program and reprogram things at insane speeds. Which is why Ken uses this form to make video games. 4 arms. Can you guess what's the main feature of this transformation? I'll give you a hint, it has something to do with its name. Yeah, 4 arms is a big red guy with 4 arms and super strength. And that's it. It's a pretty simple form. Wild Mutt. Wild Mutt, Ken's names for these forms don't get any better, is a giant orange dog monster with no eyes. However, instead of eyes, Wild Mutt uses his main power to see, smell. You know sonar, well Wild Mutt has that but with smell. He's great for tracking things down and finding things. This form's not bad in combat either. It's pretty agile and strong, not as much as other forms, but more than most normal people. And he has super sharp claws. Stinkfly. Stinkfly is a massive bug monster that smells like poop. So its name is accurate if still uncreative. As you can guess, Stinkfly can fly, and his second ability is shooting weird sticky goop out of his 4 eye stalks. It's also very flammable. Lastly, he has a very big tail that acts like a blade, and can cut through steel like a tin can. Eye Guy. Eye Guy can create a bunch of eyes all over his body, which can shoot lasers. These lasers can burn or freeze things, and he can combine the eyes to make bigger, more powerful eyes. Unfortunately, this form comes with a terrible price. Some forms make minor changes to Ken or Nara's personality, and in this form, Ken makes K-level eye puns. It's more painful than any laser could ever be. Heat Blast. Heat Blast can create and shoot out fire, as well as control any fire that he creates. He can also absorb fire into his body, so he's actually great at putting out fires. The fires he can make are pretty strong, but not as strong as Endeavor, and especially Netsu. Feedback. Feedback can absorb, not just electricity, but any form of energy. Fire, lasers, electricity, light. So long as it's not a physical attack, he can absorb it through his fingers and weird head tentacles. Although whenever he shoots it back out, it comes out as an electric attack. So far the amount of energy he can absorb seems limitless. Blitzwolfer. Blitzwolfer for the most part is the same as Wildmutt, but with worse smell, still better than most, and eyes. The main difference is that Blitzwolfer can shoot out a huge sonic attack from his mouth. Ripjaws. Ripjaws are giant fish, with a giant jaw. Of course he can breathe underwater and swim really fast. He also has a massive jaw with very sharp teeth that can bite into almost anything. Even Kiba at full power would find it painful to get bitten by them. His bottom half can switch between a fish tail and legs, so he can go on land, but he has to be in water to breathe, so he's not very useful without it. Lastly, he also has claws, but compared to his jaw, they're nothing to write home about. Ghost Freak. We've never seen Ghost Freak before. This is the form that made Ken attack his sister, and it's not available on the Omnitrix, because it makes him too aggressive. Apparently he can pass through objects, but that's all we really know. Nara. Nara is Ken's sister, and one of the few kids here to not be an OPC. Unlike Ken, Nara doesn't have a form that makes her go berserk. But she didn't want to leave her brother, so DOC just shrugged their shoulders and took her too. Which is weirdly nice of them. Nara's one of the smarter people around, having some of the best grades in our classes, but she somehow has even less creativity than her brother, which leads to her struggling in fights sometimes. She is generally pretty nice, although she can act like a smug know-it-all sometimes. And her ego is real, unlike her brother. Her quirk is the same as her brother's, only with different forms. Other than that, it works the exact same way. Gray matter. Gray matter is super tiny. Like the size of an adult hand. So she's not super useful in battle like this. However, this form is extremely smart. Smarter than anyone around here, except maybe the scientists. She can understand advanced sciences, machines and biology with ease, and who knows what else. Cannonbolt. Cannonbolt is like an armadillo. She can roll up in her shell to make a giant wheel. And much like a wheel, she can roll around, moving at speeds faster than most cars, and hitting like an actual cannonball. She also has claws, but they don't really come into play much. XLR-8. Is it just me, or did Ken save all his good names for his sister? XLR-8 has insane speeds. Being the fastest person in the whole Midoriya Foundation. She's even faster than Kiba at full power. However, without her speed her attacks are pretty weak, so she needs to move around a lot to pack a punch. She also has some claws, which can be really deadly when combined with her speed. Diamond Head. I think Diamond Head is Nara's favorite form. And I can see why. Diamond Head is a huge figure made out of crystals that look like, but aren't actually diamonds. She can shapeshift her arms however she likes, mostly using them to turn into swords, and she can shoot out sharp crystals. Nara can even make diamonds erupt from the ground in pillars. Also, being made of crystals, she can reflect lasers. Articuno. Articuno has only one ability: it can shoot out a beam from its mouth that'll freeze anything it touches. Ditto. Ditto is pretty weak on their own, but they have the ability to split into a seemingly infinite number of clones. However, there is a big downside to this. Anything that happens to one of the clones, happens to the rest of them. Meaning if they get injured or killed, so do the rest of them. So Nara mostly uses this form for chores instead of battle. Humongosaur. Humongosaur is the strongest of both Ken and Nara's forms, being absolutely massive. They can even get even bigger and stronger, but it causes some strain on their body. They're also really slow, and easy to hit. Blocks. So Blocks is an ape made of Legos. Which is somehow the weirdest of all their forms. Blocks can shapeshift their body in any way they like. Extending their arms, turning into a wall, turning into a cannon and shooting out parts of themselves. They can also detect their body from anything they shapeshift into. So they can make a Lego cage around someone, and then detach from it, and regrow their whole body. By the way, these Legos are not really Legos. They're more like concrete than plastic. Wildvine. Wildvine is a plant. Their body is completely made of plants, and can shift and regenerate just as well as Blocks. Although their body is way softer. Wildvine can control planets around them, to do whatever Nara wants. Lastly, Wildvine has weird black pods on her back, that they can pluck off, and throw, which will make them explode like bombs. Lodestar. Lodestar's body is made up of a bunch of small magnets, and a metal head. They can control any and all metal using their weird hands, and since their body is made of small magnets, if it's torn apart, she can put herself back together. Although the same can't be said for her head. Chapter 210, Fu's Updated Notes Part 4. YABA. Yaba is technically my aunt, because she's my dad's sister, but we don't really think of her that way, because it's just way too weird. Anyway, Yaba is one of Dad's sisters and lived with our horrible excuse for a grandfather for most of their lives, who if didn't quite get it by now, wasn't a very good father either. They didn't have anyone but each other, so they stuck together all the time. And Yaba was the angry one of the three, getting them into all sorts of fights, and even now she's still very aggressive. She also speaks like a standard thug, and curses as much as possible. Her quirk is called Cerberus, and it's a quirk that she not only shares with her sisters, but their quirks are linked to each other. Their quirks give them super strength and speed, regeneration, and fire breathing. However, the power of their quirk depends on how close they are to each other. The closer they are to each other, the stronger they are. So while they are very strong when they're together, if you can separate them, they're kind pushovers. Ji. G is the quiet smart sister. She shares my hobby of analyzing quirks, and has some of the better grades in class. She doesn't talk much, but she is very nice to talk to when she feels like it. Sometimes we meet up in the library and talk about quirks. Now she's starting to learn stuff in the lab. Maybe I should do the same. G's quirk is almost the exact same as her sister's, with the only difference being that she has a snake for a tail. The snake is not poisonous. Inu. Inu is the sweet, nice sister. She's as pure can be. Always willing to help anyone and everyone, and never wanting to fight, although she will if she has to. She spends most of her time with her sisters, but apparently she's been getting some cooking lessons from Fuku. Other than that, she just likes to help out around the house. Inu's quirk is the same as her sister's. Leiden. Lu is without a doubt the most bizarre kid here. So get this, Lu is from over 200 years in the past. No, I'm somehow not joking. Lu used his weird quirk and Chaos Emerald to teleport himself from China to Japan over 200 years into the future. I need to move on from that, otherwise I'm just gonna keep repeating it. So Lu was born in Germany, but he had a rare illness that left him bedridden. So he was sent to live with his grandfather along with his cousin Maria, in China. Their grandfather was a scientist that researched something we don't really know much about, but whatever it was, it probably involved chaos energy probably. Lu experimented on in hopes of curing him, giving him what could be history's first quirk. Or maybe a prototype quirk. This kinda helped Lu. He was able to get out of bed, but not for long. His old condition was cured, but now he had a new one, similar to Jin's, where he's constantly letting out energy, leaving him exhausted. The experiments went on for a while, until the lab they lived at was attacked by an evil organization, some things just don't change, called GUN. Their grandfather gave Lu a Chaos Emerald, and told him to run. And they did run. To Japan. Over 200 years in the future. They teleported into our lab and the rest of is history. Personality-wise, he's what you'd call an edgelord. He thinks he's cooler than he really is, and tries to prove that to everyone. But considering he doesn't really know what he's doing most of the time, he often fails. His quirk is called Chaos Control. And honestly, I don't fully understand how it works. It seems like he can give himself different quirks, but doing so uses up energy, and his body can only handle so much energy at once. He can shoot energy blasts, teleport, power up his body, and even mess with time. His restrictor rings limit his power, but they also keep him from using too much energy and hurting himself. Amai Nigai. Amai is a friend of ours that Yami met when he walked into town. She has two modes. Sweet girl mode, and toxic gamer mode. Most of the time, she's a really nice girl, who likes to spend her time helping the less fortunate with her quirk. But whenever she touches a video game, she changes and becomes an arrogant gamer who insults everyone around her for their gaming skills. She's actually already kind of a pro gamer, having won a few tournaments. Oh, and she's also very obviously in love with Yami. Amai's quirk is called mood candies. She can pop out candies from her body, and anyone who eats those candies will suddenly start feeling more of whatever emotion Amai was feeling when she made the candies. You can tell what candies do what by the color of them. But you can just use food paint to disguise them, or put them in something else so they can't be seen. These candies are way more dangerous than you'd think. Yonde used them a few times to get information out of people. And of course there was the love candies incident. Sori Jaga. So Sori was bred by the Nekononako Foundation, which is a group of evil business catgirls, to be one of the strongest catgirls around. And they succeeded. She was raised to be a fighter, and nothing else. Which explains why she's only good at fighting, and has the smarts of a toddler. At some point she became a fan of Kiba, and decided she wanted to work for the Midoriya Foundation. Now, normally when someone wants to work for a place, they call and set up an interview. Not Sori though. She decided to break into our forest, destroy our security system, and scare us all half to death, because we thought she was an assassin. The worst part about that, is that it worked. Sori is, as mentioned, an absolute idiot. She and Kei have the same level of intelligence, and Kei is like 7. One time, she literally got stuck in a toilet. Combine this with her love of fighting, she is pretty much the battle anime protag that you'd mistake Netsu for. Oh, and of course, her super big appetite. But at the very least, she is very good at fighting, so she is good at the one job we give her. Her quirk is called Ultimate Breed. So she's essentially a super cat girl. She takes the best part of all big cats, and multiples them. She's super strong, and even faster. Not as fast as XLR8, but close. And she doesn't have a 10-minute time limit, and combine her strength and speed with super sharp claws, and she's a force to be reckoned with. Along with that, she also has super senses, and lots of training, making her even more, extremely deadly. Sai Buara. Sai was a former hero called Saber, who worked very closely with the Hero Public Safety Commission, ever since she was young. And was the leader of a hero team called the Servants. But one day, something terrible happened, and her team fell apart. Then she had a falling out with the HPSC, and quit her job as a hero, before eventually joining the Midoriya Foundation. Sai is pretty serious. She wears the same expression most of the time, except when she's eating. That's when she's at her happiest. Somehow, she has an even bigger appetite than Sori, and she is an absolute simp for good food. Also, apparently she has a kid that she didn't know about, but I don't know too much about that. Her quirk is called Unlimited Blade Works, which has to be one of the coolest quirk names I've ever heard. Basically, she can open portals into some kind brain space and shoot swords out of them. She can open these portals anywhere around her and shoot any kind of sword out of them. And I mean any sword. If she's seen it and considers it a sword, then she can remake it and shoot it out at you. This includes short swords, long swords, exploding swords, huge swords, blunt swords, electric swords, poison swords, and way more. But it has to be a sword. No lances, shields, or knives, or anything like that. And not anything that's just sword-shaped, you have to be able to use it like a regular sword for it to count. The only big downside of this quirk is that opening the portals uses up her stamina. She can shoot as many swords out of an already open portal, without any effect on her. Tokoshi Totoyai. He's one of the cool old guys who still acts like he's a teenager most of the time. Once he was a vigilante due to hatred for all things crime and love for all things justice. So he has some experience fighting. Believe it or not, he's pretty similar to Ken and Kiba with the always trying to look cool thing. He likes to come off as a cool-headed, respectful butler, but he's actually kind of a goof. His quirk is called, Strength Comes with Age. Bit of a mouthful, but it's accurate. Basically, the older he gets, the stronger he gets. And being as old as he is, he's plenty strong. He's even stronger than Kiba at her full power. Although I'm not sure how he'd do against her berserk form. Giza. Giza is one of the few animals who has a quirk. But at first you'd think he was just a human with an animal quirk. We don't know much about Giza. He was old friends with Mizu, had the same experiments done on him, and apparently, he's been fighting another evil organization until he found 4 baby turtles, and so he needed a place to hide. And that place is here. So now he works as a bodyguard. His quirk is called Perfect Combatant. It's an intelligence quirk, but instead of making him a super scientist, or anything like that, it makes him smarter at fighting. He's what you'd call a fighting genius. He pretty much has a maxed out skill stat. But the disadvantage of that is that the rest of his stats are just average. And in this world, you can't win every battle with skill alone. Try fighting hawks with martial arts. See how far you get. Chol Bate. Chol is Alice's mother. And sister of America's #1 hero, Stars and Stripes. Unlike her sister, she's the serious type who enjoys staying back and doing paperwork, which she's more than capable of doing. She's been a big help as Dad's secretary, and I can't express how happy I am that she's here. Her quirk is called Absolute Authority. It's simple yet powerful. If she says your name, she can command you to do anything she wants. Unlike her daughter, you can't resist this, even if you know it's happening. The only way to keep her from controlling you is to keep her from talking, or make sure she doesn't know your name. Vera Nikitina. Vera is our nurse. She was originally from Russia, but she came here looking to find a job as a nurse or a doctor. With little success. Vera's quirk is called Reverse Action. Basically, she can make whatever she does, do the reverse of what it's supposed to do. If she punches someone, she can make it heal. If she walks forward, she can go backwards instead. ECT. She uses this to heal people, but that means that she has to do things that would normally hurt someone. And her medical tools are actually weapons. Hammers, guns, flamethrowers, the like. So naturally, most people didn't want to hire her. But lucky for her, Dad couldn't care less so long as her healing works well, and it does. So she got hired. Vera is a free spirit, doing pretty much whatever she wants, whenever she wants, and since those things don't go against what Dad wants, he just kinda lets her. Most specifically, she has a thing where she tends to heal people on sight. Which can be a bit scary if you don't know what's happening. Or even if you do. It's probably a good thing she's here, otherwise she'd have been arrested by now. Maria. She's the other time traveler that came with Lou. Unlike Lou, she didn't go through any experiments, and since she is from the time before quirks, Maria is completely quirkless, and isn't used to quirks in general. So imagine if you're not used to quirks, and see someone like Kai or Shiroku. Hilarious. Personality-wise, she's a pretty nice, but stern person. Obviously she's stressed out right now, but hopefully she'll calm down after a while. A long while. Sue. Not much to say about Sue as a person. We found her in a dumpster after her parents didn't want her. They didn't put her there and I quote felt like trash, so I went where I belong. Yeah, not the spitting image of mental health. Then again, who am I to talk? She seems to idolize dolls, and wants to be one. No desires of her own, other than to serve her masters. In this case, Dad and us. Most of the time, she's pretty robotic, seemingly faintly pleased whenever she's finished a task. Her quirk is called Puppet Master. She has holes in the tips of her fingers, so that she can shoot out strings. She can control the strings however she wishes, and she can shoot out different kinds of strings, with different levels of thickness. The thicker the string, the stronger it is, but she can also shoot out strings so thin you can't even see them. Chapter 211, Fu's Updated Notes Part 5. Izuku Midoriya. Dad. I've been trying to write down this entry for a while now. Let's start from the beginning. Dad was born to a loving mom, and a walking pile of trash for a father. His life was like any other kid his age, had a few friends, but only one that's important. Katsuki Bakugo. His mom, Mitsuki Bakugo, was close friends with Grandma Inko, so Dad and Katsuki had known each other since they were babies, and had been friends for about as long. This is also when Dad first saw heroes, specifically All Might, in action, and fell in love with the idea of heroes. Becoming completely obsessed with the idea of becoming one. Unfortunately, Dad was then told he was quirkless. And his whole life fell apart. The world treats quirkless people like they're less than human. His old friends turned on him, made fun of him, and even beat him up for no reason. The teachers lowered his grades, punished him for no reason, and let other kids do whatever they wanted to him. And Katsuki Bakugo was the worst of it. Bakugo had gotten a powerful quirk, and everyone treated him like a king because of it. So his ego blew up, a lot. He thought of Dad as below him, and started bullying him more than anyone. Even using his quirk on him. They called him Deku. Someone who can't do anything. His trash dad finally left him and Grandma, making things even harder because it meant Grandma had to be at work more. Making Dad even more alone. And all while this was happening, they kept making fun of his dream. Saying that there was no way a quirkless person could ever be a hero. Even Grandma Inko didn't believe in his dream. But he refused to let go of it. No matter what anyone says. Anyone except All Might. Dad finally got to me All Might, and asked him if a quirkless person could be a hero. And All Might said no. I know All Might was probably just trying to keep him safe, but I have to disagree with him. I'm sure there are things Dad could have done as a hero, even if they would have been small. But it was probably for the best that he said that. Even if I feel gross for writing that down. I really am a selfish kid. Anyways, after that Dad became depressed. Being a hero was the only thing Dad had hoped for. He'd become so obsessed with it, that without that dream, he felt hopeless. Dad can't live for himself. He always has to be helping someone, otherwise he loses his mind. Luckily, someone in need came to him. Eri. She just managed to escape from Overhaul and his goons, and ran all the way to Dad's house looking for somewhere to hide. Dad let her in, and hid her under some dirty laundry, and then pretended to be asleep, which tricked the villains into thinking Eri wasn't there. He also recorded them breaking into his house to look for her, so he had plenty of evidence to give to the police. After the police arrested the villains, Dad met All Might again, who apologized for what he said, and told him that he had been a hero. Which is when they started to become friends, I think. Dad met Nami for the first time, and adopted Eri. Although he only thought of her as a sister at first. According to Dad, getting Eri made it feel like he'd been reborn. Like he'd been drowning for so long, and finally came up for air. Relieved, but still terrified they'd go back under. That's when Dad became the doting father we know him as. Dad's luck only got stranger and stranger after that thought. Saving Kay from a villain using her as a weapon. Helping me and Kiba by feeding us. Finding Sanson in that jar. He just couldn't stop finding dangerous kids to take care of. So Deosi made a deal with him. Making him the head of a new organization called the Midoriya Foundation, which adopts OPCS from Deosi and raises them. Unfortunately, giving Dad all those children was a bit much. He didn't trust anyone, so he couldn't hire people, and didn't have any self-worth, so he never stopped working. All that work caused his health to suffer, until he collapsed. I remember the day that happened. I felt fear and sadness for the first time in a long time. I hate how much I enjoyed it. Thankfully, this was when Dad finally learned to worry about his own health, and things have been pretty okay since then. Okay, not really, but he's not been collapsing. Maybe things would have been pretty okay if weren't for the villain attacks. The villain attacks have been really stressing him out. I'm starting to get worried about his health again. Anyway, Dad's personality can best be described as obsessively nice. He'll take care of everyone but himself, and his aggressive niceness in this cruel world is slowly driving him insane. What kind of insane, we'll see. Hopefully the not-so-bad kind. Dad is quirkless, as I said, but not all the time. Thanks to Sheena, we can kinda see what his quirk would have been. Repel allows the user to repel themselves away from other things, and other things away from themselves. I don't know how this quirk would be on its own, because Dad always uses a version that's powered up because of Sheena. But when it is powered up, it's really strong. He even fought against Uraraka for a while on even ground. I mean, it was all over when she hit him once, but it was still impressive. Then again, that might just be because Dad's really smart. Now he's learning how to fight with a staff, so I'm looking forward to seeing what comes from that. Achiko Uraraka. Or as many of my siblings have started calling her, Mamaraka. I'm not normally one to ship real-life people, but honestly I feel like her and Dad getting together could only be a good thing. Help Dad de-stress, help his parents, ECT. And they're obviously into each other, but they just keep avoiding it. Again, normally I'd respect that, but I really think it'd help Dad if they just got together already. It might be good for Uraraka too, I don't know, I'm not a romance expert. I guess I should start talking about Uraraka herself. She was born to a pretty poor family who had a failing construction business, and since her parents treated her so well, and loved her so much, she swore to do everything in her power to pay them back so they could live comfortable lives. Which is completely adorable. Something else she loves is watching people smile. Which is why she decided to become a hero. Uraraka is another one of those balls of sunshine, but she can be more serious than the usual sunshine balls around here, mainly because of how concerned she gets for other people. She's got the girl next door energy. Her quirk is complicated. So the first thing she can do is control the gravity of anything she touches. Either making something heavier, or completely weightless. Then she also has this super body enhancement ability. Making her stronger, faster and tougher than even Kiba, and it's not close. Her power kinda reminds me of All Might. And she's around him a lot too. Wonder if there's anything going on there. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 39. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.